Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Tuesday. Tuesday study the Srimad Bhagavatam. Kaustubha, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Here's our new answer. Me and Justin have a new answer if you ask us, how are we? Try it.
Okay. How are you?
Justin? Blessed and highly favored.
Okay.
Blessed and highly favored. Good morning to you. Mara, how are you?
Blessed and highly favored.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah. We had a nice sweet baby Krishna last night. Kaustubha Ji.
Yeah, I heard 50 people were there.
50 people drinking up that sweet baby.
Okay.
Here's a nug for you. You ready for some nugget juice?
Yeah.
Your routine is the foundation of your life. It's the joy of your life or the demise of your life.
Who's that coming from?
The Buddha. I don't know.
Rumi.
It could be the Buddha. They quote him with everything.
Okay, say it again.
Your routine. This is our sadhana. This is our daily sadhana. What we're doing on a regular basis. Your routine is the foundation of your life. It's the joy of your life, or it's the demise of your life. You want your joy? It's what you do on a regular basis, right? Or that it's bringing you higher, or the things that you're doing on the regular basis that are bringing you lower. I was just talking to a friend yesterday who just said, I can't stop watching these like political YouTube videos and stuff like that. It just wrecks your brain. There's certain things that you do on a regular basis, and you know it when you do it. If you could stockpile those, it just starts to dismantle your joy. We got to keep adding those things. Give us some life, give us some fuel, lift us up higher. And those things just generally tend to tie into Krishna Bhakti. Go figure.
Thank you for sharing that.
Well, that's why we're doing Sweet Baby Krishna a lot lately. There's I was sharing yesterday that thing on Sweet Baby about there's like a deafening silence if you go from someone like me who's had a bunch of kids in a household, and then I'm going through this divorce, and there's times where like no one is around. And I'm never used to that. I'm always used to like, even when I'm away, it's sort of like, it's mixed with phone calls and where are you and what are you doing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like a deafening silence, which I think in any
Why
other...
do you call it deafening? Why is it?
Because it's so loud, the silence. That's my point. It's so loud that it's a little like overwhelming. I'm not used to it. And in normal circumstance, it'd either be like a boredom or a type of peace. But at least for like what I'm going through, it's sort of like it's a reminder. I feel like Krishna just took like the pizzazz of life, because I'm absorbed in that with kids all the time. And for the last like 3 weeks, it's like being me and Justin, cruising around in the F-150, couch surfing and staying in the ashram like a sannyasi, like a swami, like a renunciate. And truthfully, it was damn shocking for me, and I wasn't used to it. And my realization yesterday was like, everything in the material world is just shined up, polished romance and hype. And then when that hype goes away, you're just left with life. And that life can be incredibly like flat, or we can put a genuine hype on something that's worthy of hype. And so I had to like force myself. Remember the other day you were like, how was Kirtan? Wasn't that a great Kirtan Thursday night? And I said, yeah, I was in a weird place. It was sort of like, I was just sort of like stripped away from everything. And I was left in sort of a new incarnation of myself. I sort of felt like a sannyasi. And I think Krishna's just pulling everything out of me to bring me to like a, so I'm forced to find some connection deep within instead of my connection out.
Right.
That's sort of, I think, where it's at.
Well, that's good.
It is good, but it's like surgery. I'm getting surgered on. I'm getting surgered on. I'm getting operated
it's uncomfortable.
on. It's uncomfortable, and it's great. And I think if I wasn't practicing bhakti, I'd be like,
how do I stop the discomfort? Right.
How would I fill my head with some type of excitement or
exactly? You try to find some way to circumvent the contemplation that you're meant to be going through right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and that mixed with one way people do it is with new romance. That's a great way to do it. So it was really useful. I took this vow of brahmachari for a year, and it's just like it makes everything even more silent. Because romance or things like that, or pendulum swings, or what do they call them? Rebounds. Those really can fill your head
the quickest way to
deafen that. Yeah, to make some noise in your head.
Yeah.
So it's been like brutally joyful.
All right.
And sweet baby Krishna's been there for me.
Good. Well, I'm here for you too, Raghu.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I may not be able to compete with sweet baby Krishna, but
yeah. And we're looking forward to hearing from our Zoomers on
They're
Friday.
starting to write in. Yesterday,
Friday
a lot of stuff
500.
started coming in. Yeah.
It's coming in, people sharing their stories. It's our 500th episode, and people are going to share how the Bhagavatam has affected their life since they got into it. And I'm excited to hear it. And so we're going to do on our 500th episode, we're going to let the Zoomers speak, or you can write into Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com and put Friday 500 in the subject and tell your story. And what was your thing yesterday? That text message you sent about the millionth?
Today will be like the 2 millionth. There's different ways people access this podcast. Some do it live here on Zoom.
Yeah.
Some do it on YouTube. And most do it through the podcast platforms. And so on the podcast platforms today, we'll pass the 2 million download mark.
That's pretty awesome.
So that's nice. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. 2 million classes on the Bhagavatam. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Your routine is the foundation of your life. It's the joy of your life or the demise of your life.
Well, routine is important in spiritual practice, right? Because it's something with us, our conditioning is so deep. And unfortunately, it's something that most of us aren't going to be able to snap our fingers and make a change. So what it takes is like steadiness, right? And repetition, and the mind doesn't always, like our minds don't always necessarily take to that. But if we can find our joy that way,
sure,
then that day after day routine begins to, it's like a snowball. It's maybe gradual, but it's getting stronger and stronger as it goes. And as you do your sadhanas, as you do your spiritual practices, hopefully the potency of them. Your ability to access the potency of them is deepening with your regulation.
And it's that repetition that actually transforms us.
Yeah.
Well,
Waking up early, going to sleep early, right? What you eat, how you eat, how, those specific routines, special sacred routines that we build into our day that we do without fail. Those things are important.
Anything else we got to say today, Mara?
Yeah, we're back to your recovery group meetings today at 11 for the men and 2 o'clock for the women.
Yes. Don't go in the wrong meeting.
Sneak into the
Wait
wrong
a
meeting.
second.
Raghunath's got a picture of a woman there, but it still says Raghunath underneath on your Zoom thing.
They oust me. Narayanam namaskrityanam chaivan narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being. Unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning. And to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated in loving service to the transcendental Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Balatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born blind, and my teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respect at their lotus feet. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16. The 2 doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, Jai and Vijay, cursed by the sages. And we last left off, Mara, on text.
We're on text 8 right now. Right, Kaustubha?
I thought we had definitely read 7.
Yeah, I think we read 7.
Oh no, hold on. I mean, we definitely read 6.
Oh.
But in any case, oh yeah, you're right. You're right. We did read 7. Both very interesting verses. But let's do a little recap here.
Recap.
Yeah, because I found something interesting. I just noticed something this morning. But these texts 6 through 12, this is Lord Vishnu speaking directly. Okay. Actually, even he begins speaking before that, but he hits a certain subject right at this point, and it's about how he feels about people that honor the Brahmanas, or you could say people that honor the devotees. And we discussed a little bit about what we meant by Brahmanas, or what he means by Brahmanas, and I think we can discuss that very briefly again. And then he's even going to expand it to he's kind of it's Lord Vishnu exposing his own heart in these verses. And they're almost extreme in how he's saying people that he's saying that the reason that I'm glorious. He's not going to say it's because the universes emanate from my body, right? He's not going to say it's because I'm in the heart of every living being. He's not going to say because the planets stay in orbit by my influence. He's going to say it's because of my devotion to these people that I'm glorious.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why the goddess of fortune, that female divinity of good fortune stays with me always, is because I'm devoted to these people. Because their qualities are so pure and high, I've devoted myself to them, and because of that, I'm glorious. It's a very interesting statement, And then he's going to say how pleased he is when people honor those people, and how displeased he is when people don't honor them. And what happens is in these and then at the 12th verse, he'll turn to the 4 Kumars and say, because you've been disrespected, I feel personally responsible for that, because these are my servants, and I'm going to ask you a favor on their behalf. that they can return here soon, that your curse not last so long, right? So I find this a very fascinating theology here. You know, it's a very different idea about God, where God's saying the whole reason why I'm worshipable, why I'm glorious, is because I'm dedicated to you, people who have such good qualities.
Mm.
But what I noticed today was those verses 6 through 12 is a different meter,
Ooh.
right? Like the meter shifted. So by meter we mean the number of syllables in each line of the verse. And so like where all the text building up to these verses were in like kind of, there's names for these meters. I forget what they are. Do you know them?
Yeah.
So like the text, so up to this point we had like 8 syllables per meter. Like text 3:16:5 goes Yannamani Chagrinati Loko Britye Kritgasi So Sadhu Varus Tat Kritam Hanti Tvachum Ivamaya. So that's
the
text 5.
classic Bhagavad Gita.
Kind of like a
meter.
classic Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, you can chant it in different melodies, but the meter is the same. It's got 8 syllables per line. And then it switches over to the meter which we chant the Brahma Samhita
Yeah.
according to.
Yasyam Ritam Malayasya Shravana Vagaha. That's 6.
Yes. Sadhya Punati Jagat Ashvapachad Vaikunta Soham Bhavabdya Apalabdya Sutirta Kirtis Chindyam Svabahu Namapi Vapratikula Vritam. So like if we were watching like a drama of this of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we saw the characters playing out, and we saw the 4 Kumars and Lord Vishnu speaking, and then he speaks these verses about his connection to the Brahmanas, so his connection to those people that are wise and peaceful and kind, etc., etc. At that point, the music would have changed. There would have been like a dramatic, a dramatic shift in the music. For 12 verses, he would have sung it in a very different way, highlighting the significance of these verses. So I thought that was interesting.
It is.
And so why don't we go ahead and just read through them. Let's go back to text 6. And if we look at text 6 and text 7, both of these verses talk about how Vishnu is saying, I'm glorious because I honor the Brahmanas. Now, again, what are Brahmanas, right? If we go to Bhagavad Gita, 1842, Krishna there will tell us what he considers a Brahmana to be. Samodhamastapa saucham, this verse, 1842.
Samma, the even-mindedness.
Peacefulness,
Dhamma.
Self-control.
Tapa.
Austerity.
Socham.
Purity.
Jnanam vijnanam astikyam.
Oh, well, there's
Did I miss one?
Shanti.
Shanti.
Tolerance.
Yeah.
Then Arjavam. Honesty.
Okay. Nishiti.
And then Jnanam.
Jnanam se jnanam astikyam.
Yeah, so Jnanam is knowledge, Vijnanam, wisdom. And Astikyam, Prabhupada translates as religiousness. I looked up the word in the Sanskrit dictionary, and I found it really has to do with faith. Right, faith. And, and I found this interesting because, if we're going to compare spirituality to religiosity, let's say, the way that people are commonly using these terms, in our postmodern world, we think of religiousness as that kind of a declaration of one's faith, right? Like, I believe, right? But on this list, that faith is like the last on the list, right? It's not the first. The first is your peacefulness, your self-control, your austerity, your purity, your tolerance, your honesty,
Also, the one previously is your realizations.
Yeah, Vijnanam.
Vijnanam, your knowledge and your realization. And then, of course, you extend a little faith past that as well. You're already very realized.
Vijnanam, it means that your realization has led to your kindness to every living being and your detachment from all things. It's like that. It's a person that's got, when you have Vijnana, it means not only do you recognize how this world works, but you've learned how to work in perfect harmony with it. It means you've got a soft heart and you're detached. A kindness and simplicity, And
blind faith is not asked for.
Yeah,
We ask for a reasonable faith in our bhakti path.
yeah, but that faith should be strong, right? It's so like that faith is strong, but it's not like mere faith, it does it, right? It's
Yeah.
not, yeah, and so it's these kind of people with these qualities that Vishnu is saying they're worthy of such honor, and he's saying that I become my glory. Again, it's not due to my being God and in creation and maintenance of the universes and so on. He's saying it's because I honor these people. So let's read text 6 again and text 7 again.
Text 6. Anyone in the entire world, even down to the Chandala. Chandala was a dog eater who lives by cooking and eating the flesh of the dog, is immediately purified if he takes bath in hearing through the ear the glorification of my name, fame, etc. Now you have realized me without doubt. Therefore, I will not hesitate to lop off my own arm if its conduct is found hostile to you.
Right. So he's saying even people of the lowest behavior, right? He's not going to say they're forbidden from my honor or whatever. He says they're immediately purified if they develop this interest in hearing about God, right? If they turn themselves in that direction, then not only are they instantly purified, but Lord Vishnu is saying that he's deeply obligated to such people, so much so that if any one of his servants were to offend that person, he would cut off his own arm. It's an extreme statement. It's super extreme. It's almost like
the most extreme. Probably I'll cut off a limb.
It's almost like you see,
I've used that in a tantrum.
Yeah, like if your mother said, I'm gonna, it's like one of those extreme kind of like, it's just a very extreme statement, right? I'm gonna cut off my own arm, if such a person. So it's saying like any person in this world, right? There's no room here for a sense of privilege due to anything but this, right? Birth or what, where you're from or your level of education or whatever. No, none of that matters. Even the dog eater, right? The least educated, the person whose behavior is really lacking, really unrefined. If that person begins to take an interest in hearing about God, then he becomes personally obligated.
Again, I want to share like in the bhakti culture, and when I'm not going to say this in all parts of Vedic culture, because some parts of Vedic culture they're really rigid into caste. In bhakti, in the worship of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna, there's many examples historically where somebody born from that low caste becomes exalted and worshipped as the acharya or as the master, because it's transcendental to a caste system. We understand that. I'm looking at everybody in Zoom. You can be a Brahmana, you can be a guru, you can be a Chandala, all according to your activities. Your activities is what makes you. And that's what, right back to our nugget. Things you do on a regular basis.
Yeah. And what you're saying right now is going to be illustrated just a few verses down the road here. So and even in the commentary. So you're thinking like Prabhupada. We'll get there.
The Lord continued, because I am a servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sin, and I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her, while others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight favor.
Okay. So again, now he says, the reason that I'm worshipable and the reason that good fortune always stays with me is because I serve people like that. Okay. So now, beginning on text 8 through 9, 10, 11, these are going to say how pleased he is when these kind of people are pleased. And vice versa. He becomes displeased when people act in such a way to displease such people.
I do not enjoy the oblations offered by the sacrificers in the sacrificial fire, which is one of my own mouths, with the same relish as I do the delicacies overflowing with ghee, which are offered to the mouths of the Brahmanas.
Yeah.
who have dedicated to me the results of the activities and who are ever satisfied with my prasad. So here it is. You can do all the rituals, but it's actually, I'm much more pleased if you're offering to the Brahmins than actually if you're offering me directly. And that other famous quote that we say is in the Bhagavatam, anyone who consider, what is it? Those who consider myself devotees of me, I don't consider my devotees, but those who consider themselves the devotees of my devotees, they're my devotees.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Yes, and as you're saying right here, it's putting this in the Vedic context. And when I say Vedic here, it's putting it in the religious context in a sense. And to be more clear, the four Vedas, they describe a lot about sacrifice and how you offer, there's a ritual in which you, and it's beautiful. You know, you create your little place where you're going to make your fire, right?
Hmm.
And you lay it all out very clean, and then you, through mantra and through meditation, you install, in a sense, you bring the presence of Lord Vishnu into that fire, and then you make your offerings to Lord Vishnu with mantra, and by pouring ghee and throwing grains into that fire. So, like, in a sense, that fire becomes the mouth of Lord Vishnu, right? We're offering back in this form. And so that is like just very standard, what is it, ubiquitous kind of, vision that you're going to see in a Vedic culture, in a Vedic civilization, right? Everywhere you look. Even people like Brahmanas will do this every morning. Like that'll become part of their ritual, right?
Yeah.
Someone will have their little fire and they'll say their prayers and they'll offer the grains and ghee into that fire as an offering to Lord Vishnu. So that's kind of respected as authorized religious ritual in Vedic culture. And the aim of it, of course, is to please God and to bring one's mind to God. So here it's saying, well, you know what? That's great. That's fine and everything like that. But what pleases me more than that ritual is when you serve those people that have these high qualities, right? Then that's actually what really touches me. So again, the verse says, I do not enjoy the oblations offered by the sacrificers into the sacrificial fire, which is one of my own mouths, with the same relish as I do the delicacies overflowing with ghee, which are offered to the mouths of the Brahmanas, who have dedicated to me the results of their activities and who are ever satisfied with my prasad, with my mercy. It's very interesting, right? Like this is further when we say jnanam vijnanam in the verse that was describing who the Brahmanas are. Vijnana means I don't just know these things theoretically, these truths about life, but they're so deeply ingrained in how I see things now. And so when we say the one who's ever satisfied with, he says, those who are ever satisfied with my prasad.
Hmm.
It means I'm satisfied. Prasad literally, we use it to mean food, but literally it means mercy. And to say that I am satisfied with Krishna's mercy, it indicates someone that has a lifestyle. This goes kind of back to what you're saying, Raghunath, right? It's like, Krishna gives something, he takes something away. I'm satisfied either way, right? I don't make my life struggling against the circumstance that God gives me.
Hmm.
But I learn to be satisfied with what God gives me, and then that enables me to go into that deeper into that internal contemplation and internal connection with God.
Another really loud part of this is that the ritual to God, it almost becomes void if you can't treat the people in your life, like the devotees, as special or as with dignity. And I think we've all sort of perhaps felt like, oh, here's a religious person, but I'm not getting anything special from this. They're just doing their own religious thing. They're a biblical scholar, a scholar of the Torah, a scholar of the Gita. But it's sort of like, how do they relate to people? And I think a big part of our practice in bhakti is not just that we have some rituals, but the rituals are actually changing how we relate to people and how we're seeing them and how we're seeing and how we're training ourselves to see everybody's actually on a spiritual path. And of course, there are great devotees, and we honor the great devotees, but everybody's actually on a spiritual path. And sometimes, to the degree that you treat people like they're on a spiritual path, their spiritual paths manifest right before their eyes. Like it just needs a little scraping away. And so, I take this verse and this concept of, the exalted devotees. When we start to actually change our behavior towards other people change. And of course, Krishna smiles upon our behavior towards others. And it's part of the ripened fruit of your bhakti practices. You start to change the way you treat people. You no longer see people as your friends and enemies. You see them as devotees. And some devotees are actually they're all devotees. They're just covered. They just forgot. And we're in the position to assist them to remember in the most loving way possible.
Raghu, you're thinking like Lord Vishnu, because in the very next verse, he's going to expand this to say it's not only how we treat these. It's really important how we treat these people with these really divine qualities, right? They should be respected, and there's, it's not like it's even like you have to conform to that, like bow down, but it's like you have to see that and honor that, like from the heart. You should be like, that's goodness. That's what I honor in life, is these qualities, particularly in these people, and I want that myself. And by honoring that, we develop those qualities ourselves. But in the next verse, he's going to say, actually, it's not only how you treat those people that like Lord Vishnu is really keying in on, but he's also keying in on like how you treat those that are vulnerable in this world. It's and by vulnerable, it can mean, we'll get there. Let's get there in a second. But why don't we read this commentary too? Because that's also going to speak to what you were just speaking about a moment ago. About
the commentary of 8?
The commentary of text 8, yes.
It's Mohan's birthday, by the way.
Oh, happy
that out
birthday,
there, Mohan G from Finland, dedicated Zuma. All right. I do not enjoy the devotee of the Lord or the Vaishnava does not take anything without offering it to the Lord. Since the Vaishnava dedicates all the results of his activities to the Lord, he does not taste anything eatable which is not first offered to him. The Lord also relishes giving to the Vaishnava's mouth all eatables offered to him. It is clear from this verse that the Lord eats through the sacrificial fire in the Brahmana's mouth. So many articles, grains, ghee, etc., are offered in sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord. The Lord accepts sacrificial offerings from the Brahmanas and devotees, and elsewhere it is stated that whatever is given for the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas to eat is also accepted by the Lord. But here it is said that he accepts offerings to the mouths of the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas with even greater relish.
Right there. So in other words, the ritual is fine, particularly when the ritual is done with the right feeling and sentiment, and not mechanically, right?
Yeah.
But beyond the ritual, he appreciates the ritual and the demonstration that it's meant to convey. But beyond that, what really moves him is how you treat other people. That's being emphasized here.
Thinking like Lord Vishnu.
Mm-hmm.
But here it is said that he accepts offerings to the mouths of the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas, even with greater relish. The best example of this is found in the life of Advaita Prabhu. So Advaita was this associate of Chaitanya, in medieval India. With Advaita Prabhu's dealings with Haridas Thakur. Haridas was born in a Mohammedan family. It's an Islamic family.
Even though Haridas.
Oh, I'm sorry. Even though Haridas is born in a Mohammedan
family.
You spell Mohammedan right?
Muhammadan.
It's they wrote Muhammadan in my book. Anyway, Advaita Prabhu offered him the first dish of prasad after the performance of sacred fire ceremony. Haridas informed him, he said, well, I'm born in this family outside of the Vedic culture.
Yeah, let's give a little context to this.
Yeah.
This is talking about what's called the Shraddha ceremony, which is a ritual that one does when their forefathers pass away, right? And so then the idea is, for the benefit of that soul who's now departed the body, a ritual is done. Part of that ritual is the offering of food to Lord Vishnu, then that food is considered to be prasad, right? Like it's one derives great benefit from it, from eating it.
Mm,
And then the first person, then that is offered to the departed soul ritualistically, so that
sure.
they can benefit from it. But then you look at your assembly of people that are there, and you say, who is it amongst this assembly that we should particularly honor to be the first person to eat this sanctified food?
Yeah,
Right?
it's like you cut the birthday cake. Where's the birthday boy? Some,
Yeah.
like
But it's a
that.
little, yeah, something like that. But it's
Something like that, but
but
totally not like that.
but totally, yeah, but exact opposite of that. In the sense that it's not just like whoever's birthday it is, but it's like who should we honor here? It's a
Who's the most
society.
qualified? Who's the most
Yeah,
qualified in our little gathering here? Who's
yeah,
the most qualified we want to put up on a pedestal and say, hey, for you, because we really honor you. And who do
right.
they pick?
Well, yeah. So you look around, and in that assembly, like in that Hindu culture, right?
Hmm.
You would expect it would be someone who was born in a Brahmana family, right?
A
Who,
guru, a son of a guru,
yeah, yeah.
someone very learned.
Yeah, and within that community, within the less, within, like, say, the less spiritually developed and more religiously focused in that assembly, then they would definitely go that direction, right? Because they're viewing things based more on externals, and such people would consider someone born in a Muslim family, a family that eats meat, a family that doesn't honor the whole Vedic paradigm and develop those qualities and so on. They would be
Well, especially at
considered.
that time, a lot of the Muslim were in charge of the state, and they were like there was genocide going on.
I mean, that's there, but I think even besides that, right? Because like
Born outside of a Vedic
even
culture.
more, yeah, even because like to this day, like for instance, we're not allowed in certain temples in India, just based on birth, because
Mm.
it's seen like so that kind of bias has been woven. These verses are to help us understand that no, that bias is not part of this tradition, but that bias has found its way into the tradition.
It's
Right.
found its way in like every tradition: Hindu tradition, Christian
Sure.
tradition, Jewish tradition. It's like a little bit of racism within that each tradition, where people
Yeah.
outside of it are just not qualified to be evolved. And here, this little story illustrates how no, it's got nothing to do with how you were born. It's got to do with where you're at.
Your qualities. Yeah. So Haridas in this tradition is considered to be like a super exalted teacher. He's called the Namacharya, which means by his example, he teaches us how to meditate and chant on the Nama, on Krishna's names. So he's considered, but he was born in a Muslim family, right? Now, in that assembly that Advaita had there, of the ritual that he's performing to honor his forefathers, there's so many ritualistic Hindu people, but there was also Haridas. And of all the people to feed first, he goes to the people, like they're like him. That's the last person. But no, but based on his qualities, Advaita saw him as the first person, as the most qualified. So please continue read, just to give that context as you read further.
All right.
Even though
Haridas was born in the Mohammedan family, Advaita offered him the first dish of prasad after the performance of the sacred fire ceremony. Haridas Thakur informed him that he was born in this Mohammedan family and asked why Advaita Prabhu was offering the first dish to him instead of an elevated Brahmana. Out of his humility, Haridas condemned himself, a Mohammedan, but Advaita Prabhu, being experienced devotee, accepted him as a real Brahmana. Advaita Prabhu asserted that by offering the dish to Haridas Thakur, he was getting the result of feeding 100,000 Brahmanas. The conclusion is that if one can feed a Brahmana or a Vaishnav, it is better than performing hundreds of thousands of sacrifices. In this age, therefore, it is recommended that Harinama, chanting the holy name, and pleasing the Vaishnavas are the only means to elevate oneself to spiritual life.
boom.
So this is by our merit, by our choices, by our activities, we can bring ourselves higher, or we can bring ourselves lower.
And we should have the
Text.
vision to look for those qualities rather than for externals when we're trying to understand who and what is to be honored specifically.
And it's nice to say, oh, well, we're all the same. And it's just not true. We're not all the same. We are whatever we do. We are what we do. And if you act in a certain way, that's what you are. If you act if I steal on a regular basis, then I'm a thief. And if I'm giving in charity or serving on a regular basis, then I'm a Savite. Then I'm charitable. So we can't just artificially say, well, we're all the same here. In one sense, we are the same. We're all spiritual beings, but our behavior has to do with what we are becoming. And we have the opportunity to evolve or devolve at every walk on this path. And every day we're going to get different options. What do you want to do today, Raghu? Who do you want to be today?
Yeah, we were saying yesterday that social justice is woven into the Bhakti culture, right, or the Bhakti philosophy. We're seeing that here, right? The idea that it's equal opportunity. It doesn't matter how you're born, where you're born. It's all based on your merit, based on your, which is, that's the essence of Martin Luther King's, dream, right? That he dreamed of a time where people would be judged not based on the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Such a huge statement. Such a huge statement.
It's a guiding statement, and it's one that gets lost even within social justice circles, like to this day. But that's the essence. It's based on spiritual knowledge, right? That on the spiritual level, we're all equal. On a material level, we're not equal. We all behave differently. So let's recognize the spiritual equality, and let's look towards improving our external behavior. And where we see that external behavior that's harmonious with divine truth, let's honor it in particular, and where we see that it's lacking, let's address it, particularly in oneself, right? Like first there, right? First, let's address our own shortcomings in terms of operating harmoniously with the will of God. And then by our example, hopefully we may be able to transform it in others. Okay.
Onward. Text 9.
Text 9. Now, so that text 8 said that he's less pleased by ritual offerings to him directly and more pleased by service to the Brahmanas or service to the devotees. And now he's going to say, I honor these people. And if I honor them, well, then who shouldn't, right? So text 9.
I am the master of my unobstructed internal energy, and the water of the Ganga is the remnant left after my feet are washed. That water sanctifies the three worlds along with Lord Shiva, who bears it on his head. If I could take the dust of the feet of the Vaishnava on my head, who will refuse to do the same? There's a hiccup in there.
So yeah, he's the master of his unobstructed internal energy. In other words, he's the master of the spiritual realm, right? And the water of the Ganges, that worshipable river that all people from this culture, honor, right? And the water of the Ganges river is the remnant left after my feet are washed. It's holy because it's bathing my feet. That water sanctifies the three worlds, even Lord Shiva, who accepts the Ganges water on his head, right? So even Mahadeva, the great god Shiva, takes that water on his head. So that's the level of how worshipable Vishnu is. If I can take the dust of the feet of the Vaishnava, of the devotee, of the Brahmana on my head, well, then who can say that they're beyond that, right? It's strong logic.
Okay. Next verse.
10.
10. The Brahmanas, the cows, and the defenseless creatures are my own body. The vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Those
They're
who
my
are
own body, right? Like any harm done to them is harm done to me.
Those whose faculty or judgment has been impaired by their own sin, poor behavior, look upon these as distinct from me. They are just like furious serpents, and they are angrily torn apart by the bills of vulture-like messengers of Yamaraj. That means there's some type of There's some type of payment in universal law when you mistreat these
Yeah.
beings, the superintendent of sinful persons. So Yamaraj he's balance. Yamaraj is balance. You're not getting punished by God. God doesn't punish. Krishna doesn't punish. But the universe does have a weighing things out,
Justice
making the
system.
water a justice to it. We've all experienced that probably. And in the bigger picture of time, it's experienced in lifetimes. We have some karma from lifetimes of behaviors. And the laws of karma are stringent. We can't circumvent them. It's even. We don't like to think like it is even. It is fair. We just may not be able to see it as fair. When we accept that it's fair, we stop complaining about the past, and we can start looking in the past and stop getting out of a victim mentality and just start figuring out how to move forward. Then we see there is a benevolent hand in everything that I have, and that's huge.
Well, let's look at this verse again. It says, it begins by saying the Brahmanas, the cows, and the defenseless creatures,
Right, the vulnerable.
the vulnerable. He says they are my own body. So in other words, again, this is a verse that's trying to get us past a sense of arrogance that we have, or a sense of callousness that we have, to think that I'm, by my faith, I'm favored by God, and meanwhile I'm being callous towards other living beings. It means I'm not getting any. I totally have misunderstood everything. So it says, well, how will I misunderstand that? It's if my faculty of judgment has been impaired by my own sin, then I'll look upon these people or these creatures as distinct from God. So if my vision is not impaired by my own bad karma, then I'll see all of these living beings as totally connected to God, and how I treat them is how I treat God. It's deep. This is where you go from religiousness to spirituality, right? It has to do with seeing everything in connection to God, and that vision being real, and then naturally, spontaneously behaving through that vision. So it's saying here that if you see any vulnerable being as worthy of your exploitation or worthy of your cruelty, including the animals, right? Then actually they're my own body. Don't think for a moment that you've got some kind of special favor of God, and therefore you can be callous to others, because actually when you harm them, I'm the one that feels it. God, Vishnu is saying. And then to to highlight it more, he's saying, the consequences of that type of callousness and arrogance is it's going to lead to your own suffering. And he paints a graphic picture of what it
Vulture-like messengers. It's a little hell and brimstone.
a little hell and brimstone to get the point
Fire and
across.
brimstone.
Yeah.
But it's true when we neglect the vulnerable and just treat them. The history of not just India, but it's all around the world, where people coming in with our religion or our way of living, the colonialism. When we did Native Americans, what some Native Americans did to other Native Americans, this idea of like, we got it right, you guys got it all wrong, and they go right, they just kill the men and just horrible things to the vulnerables, enslave the children, rape, kidnap, torture, just like horrible things over and over. It's just the study of history, and sometimes it's done with a religious zeal, a religious flavor, like, yeah, because we're helping you guys, and it's so off course, and it's not favored by Vishnu. It's not favored by God, even though you might be saying it in the name of God. In the name of God is a type of respect and type of extension of mercy to the vulnerable.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's okay. It'll be figured out in the bigger picture of things. We can't, even in the name of God, we can't act like complete miscreants. It will balance out. And huh.
That
I'm
was
starting
that.
to reflect of like my miscreant behavior and my,
Well, we all have this, and we all have a history of this, and to this day, on a massive scale, we see cruelty to the vulnerable in the form of animal slaughter. Srila Prabhupada would always emphasize the reason why we go through all these wars and we kill each other is a reaction to how we're treating the vulnerable, how we're treating the animals. Now, in the first line of this commentary, Srila Prabhupada says something. Now, in my mind, it's so right on, but we have in the current climate, the language is very touchy. But let's try to really understand what it means. Okay, he says the defenseless creatures, who he's saying are his own body, right? Who he's saying that one must treat with respect. Who he's saying if you don't treat with respect, you're bringing great misfortune upon yourself. So Prabhupada will say the defenseless creatures, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, are the cows, the Brahmanas, the women, children, and old men. Right? That within society. Now, because when we hear this, women are defenseless, well, of course they're not entirely defenseless. But history shows that women are prone to the exploitation of men, particularly.
Well,
right?
Yeah. They can get raped. They can get,
There's so many,
generally speaking, there's always
power.
going to be some warrior
Yeah.
women out there. But for general, the history of history is that the women get taken as hostage, put into harems, killed, raped.
Yeah, and I mean, in so many ways, not necessarily even such extreme examples, right? But exploitation physically, or through power structures, as well as children. And here it's saying old men, and it's saying Brahmanas too, right? Like these peaceful people, right? Like people that live simply and peacefully, they can be exploited too. So it mentions specifically cows. It means all defenseless creatures, or anyone that's vulnerable in any way. All people really, but specifically here it's mentioning cows, Brahmanas, women, children, and old men. And so you'll see statements like, I believe it was Gandhi that had a statement, something like, you can judge a society based on how they treat the animals, right? And you'll find similar statements about like how women are honored in a particular society. It's a big indicator of the level of realization there. And you could say spiritual realization, right? And so here we see that a statement from Lord Vishnu himself, saying that when such members of society, even including the animals, right, are harmed, don't think you're getting away with it. You're harming me directly. I'm feeling it, and you're going to pay for it, right? And then text 11 is the contrast. So these are those that displease Vishnu or displease God, those that are callous and arrogant towards the vulnerable. And then text 11 is the contrast.
By the way, I want to put out there, because we have a lot of people who are new to the show and just getting into all this stuff. It's hard. A lot of people, if you're like myself, I grew up eating meat. I grew up in an Italian household. My parents never had money growing up. So as soon as they sort of made money, it was a sign of, hey, we made it out of like the ghetto. We can afford meat every day. And so you get attached to it. You get attached to these things. They become part of almost like your identity. Yeah, I'm Italian. That's what we do. And it's hard to sort of let go of that, because it's sort of letting go of your identity as well. But we're asking you to enter into a new paradigm and shine light on actually what's going on. And we sympathize with you if it's a little difficult. Is it difficult? It's tricky. There's also propaganda. Nowadays, it's so much different than when me and Kaustubha were getting into vegetarianism, where there was no support system. There was no you could just watch a bunch of videos on Instagram from Bhakti Chris, who posts these all the time, of animal slaughter, and you're like, yeah, what the hell am I doing? This is some horrible stuff I'm engaged in. This is a system of like death and brutality, and there's no way, sometimes we say, well, Jesus saved me. There's no way Christ would walk into that slaughterhouse and thumbs up it. So this is it's something we have to wrestle with about. If I want compassion in my life, I have to extend that compassion and adopt a little bit more of a cruelty-free lifestyle. And there's support systems, and there's veggie burgers, and it's in the public conversation, whereas it wasn't previously. You couldn't go to even Burger King and get a veggie burger at Burger King. Give me a break. You can actually get a vegan burger at Burger King nowadays. I'm not recommending it, but you can do it. It's in the conversation nowadays. Whereas when I became vegetarian on Thanksgiving Day in front of my Italian family, they were like, "What are you talking about?" You know, it didn't even like, yeah, it was met with like anger and so much pushback. So anyway, we sympathize if you're struggling with that. Reach out to us if you are struggling, and it's a good topic. And I don't want to take it for granted, but we're raising the bar high here, and it means we have to jump a little bit. But as you jump higher, sometimes you fall short. But we appreciate everybody who's going through this and they're struggling with some type of attachment that they know they have to let go of. I'm just going to give you a little amen there.
All right.
On the other hand, they captivate my heart who are gladdened in heart, and who their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles. Respect the Brahmins, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words.
You want
They
to read
look
that
upon
again? I think it's just
What's that?
it was a little hard to follow.
I'm sorry. On the other hand, they captivate my heart. This is Vishnu speaking, who are gladdened in heart, and who, their lotus faces enlightened by the nectarian smiles, respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas may utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you.
Yeah. There's so many indications about behavior here and what pleases Lord Vishnu. So he's saying, the previous verse said, people that are cruel or callous or arrogant in their behavior towards the Brahmanas and other defenseless beings, it's like they're attacking me personally. Whereas people that respond with respect, and then he gives this example of like, he gives us a way to capture the essence of that. That even if the wise person is speaking words that are hard to hear for me, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I've upset them in some way. Like what we see happened here with Jai and Vijay upset the four Kumars. That what gladdens him is when that person doesn't become self-righteous, doesn't become all haughty, doesn't become angry.
Haughty?
Yeah, but responds like in a smiling way, saying, appeases that person, saying, I've upset you and I'm really sorry that I've done that. I see your exalted qualities and I see what I've done has disturbed you. Well, then there's something wrong with me, and I'm very, it's that humility that's very pleasing. So he says, on the other hand, they captivate my heart, right? It will captivate the heart of Lord Vishnu, who are gladdened in heart, and who their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. Right? They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self, and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. As Lord Vishnu, he's demonstrating that right now, in how he's speaking to the four Kumars. We're over time.
That's our time, sir.
Yeah. Mara, what you got?
I got a lot of takeaways today.
A lot of takeaways,
Okay.
Mara?
Yeah. Don't let your daily routine dismantle your joy.
Ooh, me likey. Don't let your daily routine. I'm going to go over that. Don't let your daily routine dismantle your joy. Okay.
Yeah. Vishnu's glory comes from his devotion to the Vaishnavas.
All right.
Yeah.
The ritual becomes void if you can't treat others with respect and love.
Boom.
Everyone is on a spiritual path. Not a fan of that. You don't like that one?
Well, it's vague. It's vague, but everyone is out there on a spiritual path. It's just that some don't reckon. Sometimes they're going down. They're hitting the bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Honor the good qualities in others and develop them within.
Nice.
Okay.
We have an opportunity to evolve and devolve at every step.
I like that. Evolve and devolve at every moment, every step.
Recognize our spiritual equality, and everyone is a devotee underneath.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just forgot. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to put those in the pocket. I'm
Also,
gonna
there
pull
should
them out
be
when I need
something
them.
about getting like torn apart by vultures if you misbehave.
Yeah. Be careful of vultures because they will tear you apart. Oh, here's that music. It's so hard to hear that music sometimes.
How's that?
Better.
Let me know.
Thanks, everybody, for joining
it up.
us. Guess who we got on Walk on Wednesday tomorrow, Kaustubha? We got
I
Sherry
think it's Sherry
Sobocinski.
Sobocinski.
She's going to tell her story about chanting in the streets and how she was incredibly confronted when she ran into her ex-husband and his girlfriend at a cafe while she was dancing in the streets like a maddened woman who had made no material sense. Thanks, everybody. Great day today. And let's I want to thank Mukunda Kishore and Ben and Esther's Vegan Deli, open in San Diego and Portland, Oregon, for sponsoring our
congratulations.
500th show. It's Friday the 500th, our 500th episode, and we're looking forward to everybody like really reflecting on how the Bhagavatam has changed the course of your life. I really want to hear, especially these Zoomers, these faces I see, but also if you're out there as an other, write it in. Send a message to wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Write Friday 500 in the text, in the subject line, and tell us your story. We want to hear all about it. We want to share it because this is how we build community. Community makes us strong when we're weak, and when we're strong, we enhance the community. So thanks for being part of this. I feel very comfortable here. Mara, what do you say? Sweet Baby Krishna tonight?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Sweet Baby Krishna, 8:30. I'll see you there.
All right, you got the
I wasn't going to
inspiration.
do it. Now I'm like a little inspired. Let us dance.